Building a community-led strategy. The shift toward community-led development isn't without significant obstacles and uncomfortable learning experiences. Both community members and development workers face challenges. These challenges require fundamental changes in expectations, skills, and institutional structures. Understanding these difficulties is crucial for others attempting similar transformations. Community-level challenges. Many community members initially question their own expertise, capacity to make decisions about development interventions. Decades of experiencing externally driven projects creates internalized beliefs. Outside experts knew best, local knowledge, inferior or outdated. Inclusive planning sessions, participants would frequently wait for external validation before expressing their own ideas. Breaking through these patterns required patient relationship building and consistent demonstration. Taking control over project decisions also meant accepting accountability for outcomes, including potential failures. The shift to community leadership requires accepting both the authority and the burden of decision-making. Internal community conflict sometimes emerges when development resources come through community-controlled processes. The time requirements for inclusive planning and collaborative implementation is substantial. Community members must balance participation in development activities with their ongoing economic and family responsibilities. The extensive meetings, planning sessions, and implementation work requires significant volunteer time commitment. Development, worker challenges. Development professionals struggle with releasing control over processes they managed. Many work with non-profits because there is a need or a resource problem, such as lack of running water. The pace of community-led processes often conflicted with institutional expectations and funding timelines. Donors' expectations should not rush community processes without undermining their authenticity. Some development workers struggled with the ambiguity and unpredictability of community-led approaches. Traditional project management provided clear roles, timelines, and success metrics. The facilitative role requires for community to shift from beneficiaries to partners. Well-intentioned organizations would conduct rapid assessments, often spending just days or weeks in communities before determining needs. The result: prefabricated solutions, water pumps for different climates, agricultural techniques, ignore local soil conditions. Community members fear losing access to resources if they disagree with the solutions. The results are predictably mixed. Infrastructure would break down within years, sometimes months. Programs would end abruptly when funding cycles shifted. The awakening. Start by conducting a survey or a meeting. Open it up to all the community members. While working on a water project, consider the location, maintenance of the equipment, theft of solar panels. The central location served some households well, but created social tensions with others who lived farther away. Install pipes during high water season. Ensure pipes function properly. Understand the seasons. Learn the agricultural trends and the menus consumed by most homes. Redefining relationships. The transformation begins with language. There are two options: either learn the local language or find a translator. Remove biases, assumptions on local expertise, capacity, and power. The role of development organizations was to fill these gaps, but this framing is fundamentally flawed. It positions community members as passive recipients, beneficiaries, rather than active agents of their own change. The term itself implies a one-way relationship: outsiders give, locals received. Gratitude was expected, but genuine partnership was neither anticipated nor structured into the work. Instead of beneficiaries, the team started using partners. A fundamental shift in power dynamics and decision-making authority requires restructuring everything from project timelines to budget allocations. Partners have agency, they make decisions about their own priorities and futures. Partners contribute knowledge, they bring expertise about local conditions, social dynamics, and sustainable solutions. Partners shape outcomes, they define what success looks like and how progress should be measured. Traditional development cycles usually built around external control. Donor timelines, standardized metrics, replicable models, all serves the needs of funding organizations, not community priorities. The new approach would need to be messier, more flexible, and far more complex. It would require development organizations to give up control over processes they have always managed. Community members are not just stakeholders, they are decision makers whose judgment might override technical recommendations. The new approach, inclusive planning. Rather than pre-designed solutions, introduce inclusive planning sessions that fundamentally restructure how decisions are made. These aren't traditional community meetings where outsiders present polished proposals and locals provide feedback. Collaborative workshops with community members as co-designers of their own development journey. The shift required patience and humility from development workers who were accustomed to being seen as experts. This requires new skill facilitation rather than presentation, listening rather than explaining, supporting rather than leading. Most importantly, it requires genuine willingness to let community priorities override organizational assumptions. The inclusive planning process unfolds over months, not weeks. Begin with relationship building. Development workers living in communities, participating in daily activities. Community asset mapping. The first formal activity involves community members creating detailed maps of their own areas. These mapping sessions reveals assets that external assessments consistently missed. Map communication networks, mobile phones, internet access, informal gathering spaces for different age groups. Map historical changes where floods had previously occurred. Crops succeed during past droughts, land use patterns shifting over generations. Community-created maps became the foundation for all subsequent planning. Instead of starting with problems and deficits, begin with assets and strengths. Instead of external experts determining community needs, residents identify their own priorities based on intimate knowledge of local conditions. Participatory problem analysis. Once assets are mapped, community members facilitate discussions to identify challenges, explore root causes and interconnections. Community members should create problem trees, identifying how different challenges reinforced each other. Which interventions might address multiple issues simultaneously? But the analysis went deeper. Example: road conditions partly due to poor drainage systems, related to deforestation patterns. The challenges as interconnected systems rather than isolated problems requiring separate solutions. Solution: co-creation. Community partners work together to develop solutions that integrate technical knowledge with local expertise. Test the co-created ideas on small scales before committing to larger investments. Solutions emerge through hands-on experimentation, community discussion, and gradual refinement based on local feedback. Elder knowledge shapes technical solutions. The participation of community elders is crucial for understanding long-term sustainability. They share institutional memory about previous projects, explaining why certain approaches failed and others succeeded. Locations with historical or spiritual significance that would affect community acceptance of new infrastructure. They understand the social and governance dimensions of water management that technical solutions alone couldn't address. They can explain traditional water sharing agreements between different areas of the village, seasonal protocols for managing common resources, and conflict resolution mechanisms. The elders also understand maintenance challenges from decades of experience with various technologies. Instead of installing new pumps, the community can focus on water quality treatment and storage systems that build on their existing water sources. Seasonal treatment systems, simple filtration and purification systems that could handle the increased contamination during rainy seasons. Early warning systems, use of mobile phone networks to share information about water quality issues. Coordinate community responses during contamination events. The technical design process is iterative and experimental. Build and tested prototype storage and treatment systems, modifying designs based on practical experience. Provide technical input, connect the community with specialized knowledge. Decision-making authority remains with community partners. Implementation through partnership. The implementation phase operates through genuine partnership rather than contractor relationships. Community members are responsible for different aspects of the work, based on their skills and interests. Local craftspeople led the construction of storage systems. Women's groups managed the testing and refinement of treatment techniques. Young people coordinated communication systems. Elders facilitate the governance discussions and conflict resolution processes. The development organization's role shifts from project manager to technical supporter and resource connector. Financial resources flow differently as well. This approach built local capacity while ensuring community ownership of both the process and outcomes. The timeline expanded beyond typical project cycles. Rather than rushing to complete infrastructure, the implementation unfolds at a pace that allows for community learning, testing, and modification. Decision-making authority. Village committees hold genuine decision-making authority over project directions, resource allocation, and implementation approaches. The committees is also responsible for challenges to prioritize, allocate available resources, which solutions to pursue, and measuring success. They control budgets directly, rather than simply providing input into externally managed financial systems. They hire local contractors, negotiate with suppliers, and manage implementation timelines. This decision-making authority extended to the right to modify or even discontinue interventions that weren't working, reallocate resources, change project focuses, or end partnerships with external organizations. Ongoing oversight and adaptation. The committees maintains active oversight throughout implementation and beyond, rather than dissolving once projects are completed. Establish monitoring systems based on community-defined success indicators, conduct regular evaluations of progress, make modifications based on changing circumstances or new learning. This ongoing oversight included financial management responsibilities, transparent systems for tracking resource use, reporting, and making decisions, manage relationships with multiple external partners simultaneously between different organizations. This coordination role became increasingly important as communities developed reputations for effective self-governance. Inter-community networks. Individual village committees connect with similar bodies in other communities, sharing learning ideas, coordinate regional approaches, and build mutual support networks. These inter-community connections developed organically as committees faced similar challenges, discover benefits from collaborative problem-solving, created opportunities for communities to learn from each other's experiences with different external partners and interventions. These networks sometimes evolved into regional advocacy bodies that could engage with government agencies, negotiate with private sector actors, or coordinate responses to policy changes that affected multiple communities. Capacity building and knowledge management. The committees became centres for community capacity building, documenting local knowledge and managing learning processes. Tools for alignment. The Community Alignment Canvas. Develop a visual framework called the Community Alignment Canvas. Core components of project planning tools. Community assets and strengths. Capture comprehensive asset mapping for communities to complete, connecting potential interventions. Include physical resources, social networks, knowledge systems, skills, cultural practices, and economic activities. For example, knowledge about drought-resistant crops, informal lending systems, women's group organisations, market access challenges, community-identified challenges and opportunities. Focus on community-defined opportunities for building on existing strengths. Address barriers to achieving community goals. Shared goals and vision. Capture the vision that emerges from community discussions, not just what people want to achieve, why those goals matter, and how they connect to deeper community values and aspirations. These shared goals became the reference point for all subsequent decision-making. Resource contributions and commitments. Documented partner community members, local organisations, external development groups. Community contributions include labour, local material, knowledge, social networks, leadership, ongoing maintenance. Success, indicators, and accountability. Capture community-defined indicators of success. Establish accountability mechanisms, respecting community decision-making authority. Included qualitative measures reflect community values, social cohesion, cultural preservation, local leadership development, quantitative measures of project outputs. Governance and decision-making. Decisions that require community consensus, ones made by committee representatives, and conflict resolution. Specification on external partners' provision of input without overriding community authority. Usage process. The process began with community members working independently or in small groups to identify assets, challenges, and priorities. Impact on partnership dynamics. Community authority has visibility and accountability. Helps external partners understand their appropriate role in community-led processes. Takes guessing out on what community needs or imposing external priorities development workers could refer to. Social capital and network. The collaborative planning and implementation processes strengthens social connections within communities. Working groups that form to address water management challenges. Trust and communication patterns developed through project work improves community decision. Communities will learn these new relationships from positions of strength and clarity and their priorities. Communities that successfully implement community-led approaches will be resources for others beginning similar processes. Economic and productive impact. Focus on building from existing assets and integrating multiple types of knowledge led to innovations, improved economic outcomes, improved storage and treatment systems leading to better agricultural outcomes, creating surplus crops, collective marketing arrangements, improving prices, and reduced transaction costs. Improved technical skills. Community members develop while implementing projects such as construction, financial management, equipment maintenance, project coordination, governance and civic engagement request. Relationships with government agencies, private companies, and other external actors for continuity. The committee structures and decision-making processes developed for project governance became models for community engagement with various outside institutions. Understand organising collective positions, presenting evidence-based arguments, maintaining unified community voices in external negotiations. This civic engagement capacity extends to advocacy on behalf of other communities. Regional networks of village committees should then begin coordinating positions on policy issues affecting rural communities, create constituencies for changes supporting community-led development approaches. Knowledge and learning systems. develop sophisticated systems for documenting, sharing, and building on their experiences. What began as project documentation evolved into knowledge management systems, capturing learning about technical approaches, social processes, and partnership dynamics. The community-controlled knowledge systems became resources for training members in new skills, for onboarding new committee members, and sharing experiences with other communities. The community provides evidence for advocacy with policymakers and donors on the effectiveness of community-led approaches. The integration of traditional knowledge with contemporary technical knowledge creates innovations, both locally appropriate and technically sound. These hybrid approaches often prove more sustainable and cost-effective than either purely traditional or purely modern solutions. Challenges and learning. The shift wasn't without obstacles. Community members might question their own expertise, having been conditioned to defer to outside experts. Some development workers might struggle to release control and trust community judgment. Patient persistence in treating community members as true partners, not just consulted stakeholders, will gradually transform these dynamics. Trust built slowly through consistent action, shares decision-making, and demonstrates respect for local knowledge. The larger transformation. What started as a project methodology becomes a philosophy of development. Development workers witness the power of community-led approaches become advocates for systemic change. The narrative shifts from helping people to joining with people in their own development journey. Success is no longer measured just in completed projects, but in strengthened community capacity, local ownership, sustainable change driven by those who would live with the long-term consequences. Looking forward, this community-led approach represents more than a best practice. It is a fundamental reimagining of how positive change happens. For your copy of the Project Rescue 360-degree diagnostic, your roadmap from crisis to success, diagnose failure, rebuild trust, and deliver impact in non-profit projects that matter, use the QR code on your screen. Thank you for watching. For more content like this, please like and subscribe.